My hands were always cold in that winter of '44. Or maybe that is just how I remember it now, the chill of the grave reaching back through the decades to stiffen these arthritic fingers. I sit here in this warm room, surrounded by the ghosts of a life lived in the shadows, but if I close my eyes, I am instantly transported back to that cramped attic in Poland. I can smell the wet wool drying on the line, the pervasive, choking scent of low-grade coal smoke that hung over the city like a shroud, and the boiled cabbage that seemed to be the only thing anyone ate anymore. It is funny what the mind holds on to. I forget the names of my grandchildren sometimes, but I can still recite the inventory list of the haberdashery in Kiev, where I worked before the world ended. I was a clerk. That was the truth of me, the bedrock beneath the shifting sands of my lies. In Kiev before the fires, before the sky turned black with German bombers, I stood behind a counter of polished oak that smelled of lemon oil. My world was a grid of perfect order, buttons sorted by size and mother-of-pearl sheen, ribbons cascading in a rainbow of silk, the rhythmic, comforting slide of the abacus beads. I knew my customers not by their politics, but by their habits. Mrs. Petrenko always bought 3 yards of flannel in November. Old man Koval needed new suspenders every spring. I had a head for it, a mind that snapped up details like a magpie stealing silver. I didn't know then that this simple, quiet skill, this ability to catalog the mundane, would become a weapon. In Poland, amidst the rubble and the gray slush of the occupation, I tried to apply that same clerk's logic to the war. I treated my cover story like a ledger. Debit, a Polish accent practiced until my throat was raw. Credit, a backstory of a displaced worker from a village that no longer existed. Balance, survival, but the math never quite worked. In the shop, a mistake meant a refund or an apology. Here, a mistake meant a basement room with a drain in the floor. I remember walking down the cobbled street that morning, the stones slick with freezing rain. The air was heavy, vibrating with the low, guttural growl of convoy trucks passing a few blocks over. I pulled my scarf tighter, obscuring my face, trying to shrink inside my coat. I was nobody. I was dust. I was Anna the refugee, looking for bread. But inside I was screaming. The fear wasn't a sharp spike anymore. It was a dull, constant ache in the marrow of my bones. It was the fear of the actor who has forgotten their lines in front of a silent executioner audience. I reached the bakery, the lines stretching out the door. We were all gray shapes in the mist, eyes downcast. To look up was to invite disaster. I kept my head lowered, counting the cracks in the pavement. 1, 2, 3. A jagged fissure like a lightning bolt. My turn came. I placed my ration coupons on the counter. They were forgeries, masterpieces of ink and paper created by a man in Moscow I'd never met. Every time I used them, I felt a phantom heat in my fingertips, as if they were burning me. Bread, I murmured, the Polish word rolling off my tongue with the specific, flattened vowel sounds of the region I claimed to be from. A hand slammed onto the counter next to mine. Leather gloves, black leather creased at the knuckles. I froze. The world narrowed down to that glove. "You," a voice said. It was not loud, but it cut through the murmur of the queue like a razor. I turned slowly. A Gestapo officer stood there. He was young, terrifyingly young, with skin as pale as milk and eyes that looked like glass marbles. He wasn't looking at my coupons. He was looking at my hands which still bore the faint, ingrained calluses of handling heavy crates, but lacked the raw, chapped ruin of a peasant woman who had spent her life in the fields. "You are from where?" he asked, his German-accented Polish clumsy but intelligible. "Lidzbark, sir," I said. My voice did not shake. I had rehearsed this. I was a clerk. I knew how to deliver a transaction. Displaced in '42. He tilted his head. The silence stretched, elastic and agonizing. I could hear the wet rasp of his breathing. I could smell the peppermint on his breath, masking the scent of tobacco. He was studying my face, cataloging my features just as I had once cataloged spools of thread. Was my nose too straight? Were my eyes too intelligent for a displaced laborer? I felt the elaborate tapestry of my identity beginning to fray. One loose thread, one tug, and the whole thing would unravel, revealing the Soviet spy beneath. Lidzbark, he repeated, tasting the word. Nice pottery there. It was a trap. Lidzbark was known for its glassworks, not pottery. Or was it? My mind raced through the dossiers I had memorized. Page 42, paragraph 3. Regional exports. Glass, sir, I corrected softly, keeping my eyes on his boots. My father worked the furnaces. The seconds ticked by, measured in the thudding of my own heart against my ribs. Then the leather glove lifted. He tapped the counter. Move along, he said, already bored, turning his gaze to the shivering old man behind me. I took my bread. I walked out. I did not run, though every instinct screamed at me to bolt. I walked with the heavy, defeated trudge of the occupied, turning the corner before I allowed myself to exhale. The air tasted of iron. I had survived the transaction, but the ledger was getting harder to balance. Back in my room, a drafty box above a defunct tailor shop, I locked the door and leaned against it, trembling. The bread fell from my hands to the floor. I stared at it, this lump of sawdust and flour that I had almost died for. I wanted to go home. I wanted the sunlight on the Dnieper River. I wanted the safety of the shop, where the worst thing that could happen was a dropped jar of buttons. But the shop was gone. Kiev was a graveyard, and I was here. I knelt by the loose floorboard under the window. My fingers, still numb, pried it up. Beneath lay the radio, a compact, ugly metal box that was my lifeline and my noose. I put on the headset. Through the static, a rhythmic tapping emerged. It wasn't sound. It was a language. I pulled a pencil from my pocket and began to write on the back of a ration wrapper. The letters formed slowly, emerging from the chaotic noise. My hand stopped. Sector 4, that was this town. The Vistula defense plans were the key to the entire upcoming offensive. If we knew where they were digging in, we could crush them. If not, thousands of our boys would run into a meat grinder. The message wasn't just information. It was a summons, a high-value target. A meeting of German staff officers was happening here, likely within walking distance of where I sat shivering. I looked at the bread on the floor. I looked at the gray light filtering through the dirty window. The clerk from Kiev was dead. She had died the moment the first bomb fell. There was only the operative now. I picked up the pencil again and tapped out the response. File, local German command. Location, the officers' club, formerly the Hotel Polski. Staffing, locals for cleaning, imported trusted staff for cooking. But attrition is high. Observe, record, ignore, major, colonel, lieutenant general. Do not engage. Diffuse, sector 4, grid 7. Red lines indicating armor concentrations. Blue circles for artillery emplacements. Dates written in the margin. Coordinate 45 north. Panzer Division Großdeutschland. Reserve position. Got it. I turned to leave. The tray tucked under my arm. The map safely stored in the vault of my memory. Stop. The word was spoken softly, but it carried more weight than a scream. I froze. Slowly, I turned back. Seated at the head of the table was a colonel I hadn't noticed before. He was older, with silver hair and a scar running through his left eyebrow. He wore the uniform of the Gestapo. He wasn't looking at the map. He wasn't looking at his drink. He was looking directly at me. His eyes were pale blue, intelligent, and utterly devoid of warmth. He didn't smile. He didn't leer like the captain. He looked at me with the curiosity of a biologist examining a specimen that didn't quite belong in the habitat. I haven't seen you here before, he said, his voice dangerously soft, cutting through the smoke and the noise. He leaned forward, the candlelight dancing in his cold eyes. Come closer. I lowered my eyes to his boots. I let my hand shake, just enough to slosh water over the rim of the glass. I stammered an apology in the thick, stupid dialect of a village girl who knew nothing of maps or wars. The colonel stared at me for a second that lasted a century. Then, the disgust washed over his face. He waved a hand, dismissing a fly. I was no longer a threat. I was merely clumsy livestock. I backed away, bowing, shrinking, until the heavy oak doors closed between us. I did not run until I was in the alley. The cold air bit at my sweat-drenched skin. I climbed the trellis to my attic room, my sanctuary of dust and shadows. I lit a single candle. My hands, steady now, flew across a scrap of butcher paper. Charcoal sketched the lines my mind had photographed. The river, the ridge, the artillery positions. Then I saw it, in the corner of the mental photograph. A detail I had recorded but not processed until the charcoal hit the page. A red circle around the village of Zalesie. Not a defensive perimeter, a containment line. Beside it, the jagged rune of the SS and a time. 500. It wasn't a battle plan. It was a liquidation order, a cleansing. I looked at my watch. 200. 3 hours. The intelligence on this paper could save 10,000 Soviet soldiers next month. It was the key to the Vistula. My duty was to wait, to courier this map to the drop point, to let the machine of war grind forward. Zalesie was a tragedy, yes, but a necessary one. That is what the NKVD taught us. People are numbers. Victory is the sum. But I remembered Zalesie. I remembered the baker who slipped me extra bread, the woman who hid a Jewish child in her cellar. If I warned them, I would blow my cover. The network would collapse. The map would never reach Moscow. I would be an imposter, a traitor to the mission, a failure. I looked at the paper. I looked at the matchbox. The logic of the spy warred with the heart of the shopkeeper. A clerk knows that every debt must be paid. But this was a cost I could not tally. I stood by the window. Below, the engines of the trucks began to cough into life. The gray convoy was assembling. They were going to kill them all. I struck the match. The flame reflected in the glass, dancing over the reflection of my own hollow eyes. I didn't burn the map. I burned the world. I slipped out into the darkness, moving not toward the village, but toward the fuel depot behind the barracks. The jerry cans were heavy, the cap twisting off with a metallic scrape that sounded like a scream in the silence. I poured the gasoline in a long, weeping trail leading to the main tank. I dropped the flame. The night turned into day. The shockwave knocked the wind out of me, a silent hammer blow that shattered the windows of the town. Then came the fire, a roaring, hungry beast that ate the sky. Sirens wailed. The convoy halted. Confusion reigned. In that chaos, the people of Zalesie ran. I saw them fleeing into the tree line, shadows against the orange inferno. I ran too. I ran until my boots fell apart. I ran until the Polish winter turned my blood to slush. I hid in barns, ate bark and frozen potatoes. The Germans were behind me, a pack of wolves hunting a ghost. I was no longer Anna the spy, nor the Polish peasant. I was a hunted animal. It took 3 weeks to reach the Soviet lines. I crossed the frozen river under mortar fire, crawling the last mile on hands and knees, holding the tattered map inside my coat. They didn't give me a medal. I sat in a warm room with a portrait of Stalin on the wall. My handler, a man with soft hands and hard eyes, listened to my report. He looked at the map. Then he looked at me. "You panicked," he said. His voice was flat, clinical. "You sacrificed a deep cover placement for a diversion. We lost eyes on the Panzer Division for 10 days because of your theatrics. I saved the village," I whispered. My voice was a stranger's rasp. "The village was irrelevant," he said, closing the file. "You are a tool of the state. Volskaya, a hammer does not decide which nail to strike. You are broken." He was right. Decades have passed. I am old now. The Soviet Union is gone. The lines on the map have changed a dozen times. But my memory has not faded. It is as sharp as the day I was born. I close my eyes and I don't see the victory parades. I don't see the flag over Berlin. I see the colonel's blue eyes. I see the fire eating the night. I see the look on my handler's face, the look that told me that to them. We were all just inventory, disposable stock to be used and discarded. I was a shop clerk once, I believed in the order of things. I believed that if you worked hard and kept the books balanced, there was justice. But the war smashed the storefront. It looted the shelves. It left nothing but broken glass and spilled blood that no ledger can ever account for. The inventory is gone. The harvest is ruined. This memory is a shard of glass I carry. Help me pull it out. Subscribe to keep this history alive.